My name's Austin Dressman, and I'm the Community and Events Manager here at Engaging Networks. I want to just do brief intros for everyone. We've got Paul St. Onchair, who's the CEO of Doing Good Digital, and we have Sarah Lesh, who's also at Doing Good Digital as the Senior Director of Web Development and Technology Solutions. And you'll notice one other person in the chat, Katie Spencer, who's their Senior Director of Digital Fundraising at Doing Good Digital, and she'll be kind of just addressing some questions as they come up. And this is another great resource if you do have any questions about what's being covered. But without further ado, I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to hand it over to you. And thanks for being here, and thanks everyone for joining us today too.
Great. Yeah. Thanks so much, Austin. Hey, everyone. Paul St. Onge here, CEO at DGD. As Austin mentioned, I'm based on the West Coast, just outside Los Angeles. Here at Doing Good Digital, we specialize in digital fundraising for nonprofits, but we have a very big focus on hospitals and specifically digital grateful patient acquisition programs. So very excited to chat through that today. Excited to answer any questions as well in the chat as they come up.
I'll introduce myself as well. I'm Sarah. I'm the Senior Director of Web Development and Technology Solutions here. I was based in Toronto up until a couple of weeks ago, and then I just moved to Ottawa. So if any of you are based in Ottawa, hit me up. Looking to make new pals in the Ottawa area. Also using this as a friendship grab.
Yes. Nice. And then so we digital grateful patient programs. I think Katie can probably throw the link in the chat. But there is also a white paper that we wrote which goes into a lot more detail than we talked about today. So feel free to grab the photo here or grab the link in the chat. Lots of detail in addition to the PowerPoint presentation that you'll be getting. We'll just move on through here. And so today, I think we'll be about 30 minutes plus some questions afterwards. May get to some questions during the chat if I'm able to, or Sarah's able to. But we're going to start with creating the journey. So talking about really what is a digital grateful patient acquisition journey, the content that we like to use to engage patients, what happens after that journey, and as I mentioned, we'll get into some Q&A afterwards. So without further ado, we'll jump into creating the journey. So the first step, and what we're talking about today, and it'll hopefully make a little bit more sense when we get into the next slide. We're talking about setting up an automated digital grateful, you can keep it with discovery, an automated digital grateful patient program that essentially when a patient visits the hospital, and this is mainly for US hospitals, there might be a version of this we could do in Canada, but in Canada, the privacy laws are a little bit more strict. But in the US, we're typically setting up programs where within 30 days of a patient visiting the hospital, we're sending an automated email series to those patients with an effort to convert them. So the first step in setting up that program is really identifying the goals for the program. So typically it's these four, with engagement being at the top of the list. I think, yes, we all want revenue. Is typically the first goal on our list, but engagement's also super important. And what do we mean by engagement? So by engagement, we define it as anyone that's really engaging with your campaign. So the goal here is to really build up an engaged list of patients throughout the series that you can convert at a later time. And the reason why that's important is because often the conversion rates of these campaigns are going to be less than your typical Giving Tuesday or end of year campaign. So some clients, they really just focus on engagement. And then we have the more obvious goals, which are identifying new donors, pipeline development. We have a number of great stories of clients that have identified leads and conversions for mid-level gifts, for major gifts, for planned giving gifts, and lastly, revenue. I think we're all here to grow revenue. So the goals that we define at the start of this really dictate what the key messaging is going to be. So, and from a key messaging standpoint, typically the most popular key message is all around honoring a caregiver. So hopefully some of you have a physical or a formal honor a caregiver program at your hospital today. And in which case it'd be very easy to translate that into this digital automation series that we're going to be showcasing. If you don't, great opportunity to really develop a program, launch the program through this initiative. No reason why you can't start collecting donations, messages for doctors or caregivers, and passing them off to the hospital. And then also when you're coming up with key messaging, I'm really wanting to focus on, as I mentioned, like engagement is super important, because for some clients, we're getting like 100,000, some clients we get 5,000 patients a month, some clients we get 100,000 patients a month. So we really want to make sure we're engaging these people so we can keep them on the list. And so how do we know what content is going to speak to all of those patients? It's really about just looking at your past communication. So as you're coming up with the content strategy for this whole campaign, take a look back at some of your past newsletters or blog posts or campaigns and really start to see what has been really had a strong performance and click-through rate for us. Then you can leverage it in this series. Next, so today we're talking about like, what does that automated series look like for grateful patients? They visit the hospital, they're getting a number of emails to hopefully convert them. Again, a lot of them are not going to convert in that series, right? So what's really important is when you're coming up with this whole plan is looking at what's going to happen after this automation. So making sure that once your patients finish this automation, that you have a strong communication calendar that really continues to interact with these patients. Because if you do have having a strong communication calendar will ensure that if you don't get that conversion during that series, you'll get them on Giving Tuesday, you'll get to the end of year, or if there's like an event that happens in the community that justifies reaching out for a campaign, you can get that conversion then too. So, and then last, the really important discovery point is just around the whole data and patient criteria. So, again, we're talking digital, we're talking emails. So an important point here is the inclusion list for your prospects can be much wider than what they typically would be for direct mail. So the direct mail team will have certainly a much narrower list. It costs money to send out direct mail, but we really recommend trying to really broaden your criteria to reach a maximum number of patients. However, we would still want to consider service lines, insurance types, and age and other criteria to make sure we're not going after everyone. I will say it's different per client. Some clients, they go as wide as possible. Some clients still keep it narrow. But I think most of our clients, they typically are sending anywhere from to 40% to 70% of the patients that are going to the hospital. And last, we won't get into this today, but the data process, it's certainly something we can help with. But obviously in setting all this up, today we're talking about how to do all of this through engaging networks and what the strategy could look like from an email standpoint. But certainly we also need to consider what is that data process from Epic to the wealth screening platform to engaging networks or Razor's Edge and Salesforce. There's got to be a deduping process in there. So all of that, we specialize in. If you need help with that, certainly we can jump in. So that was a mouthful, but that's sort of the discovery process. But that really sets us up for the rest of this convo today. So we'll go to the next slide. And then we want to talk about, we'll get into actually mapping the journey. And so we're going to zoom in just a moment, but I'll stay here for just a second. On the slide, there's two sort of tracks. There's a track on the left and a track on the right. So typically for most clients, we have two tracks of communication. On the left is our track for non-donor patients. So this is the vast majority of your patients that are going to the hospital. These are all non-donors. The track on the right, we are going to have a number of patients that are already donating to your organization and that visit the hospital. And so we want to make sure that when they come through, that their experience sort of matches their giving history. So typically that's a little bit different. It might be more around, hey, thank you for being an existing donor. would you like to renew your gift? Something along those lines. But today we're going to focus on the left side. So let's go to the next slide. And so what does the journey look like? I'm going to pause here for a second, then I'm going to zoom in one more time. So typically we'll use round numbers. We'll say 10,000 patients. So typically we'll get 10,000 patients that will come into the very top of this funnel. And then through Engaging Networks, we'd want to set up an automated 3 email series. And now we'll go to the next slide to zoom in just a little bit further. So hopefully y'all are able to read this a little bit more. So track 1, it goes in, and I'll talk about some sample key messages in just a second, but we have 3 emails that go out, typically with there's typically 2 calls to action that are spread out throughout the series. So one call to action is obviously to donate. The second call to action is more around taking a survey. And that survey, I have an example in a moment, but that survey could be the honor a caregiver ask, like send a message to a caregiver. We would do that through a survey. Or it could be like, tell us what type of content is most important to you. Are you most interested in education, research, care? What's most important to you. But typically we want to focus the call to action across those 3 emails is making a donation and taking a survey. So if someone makes a donation, and again, this would all be set up in ideally an automated fashion. If they make a donation, they go down the left side of this chart. So if they make a donation, they don't need to look at it. I guess, again, I obviously just going to explain it. But if they make a donation, they'll get a thank you page. They'll get a welcome series, just like you probably already have set up. And then they would go into your regular file as an annual donor. If they decide to take a survey instead of donating, if they decide to send a message to a caregiver or action on that survey, we typically recommend after that survey is taken, you can then from there redirect them to a donation form and then hopefully get that donation. The third outcome from all of this is there's no action. They don't take a survey. They don't donate. So in that case, we would send them down this path on the right, which is the no action path. So, and then we'll just go back up one slide, Sarah. Thank you. And so I'm going to zoom out just a little bit. So down here, if for all of because again, the majority of your patients are not going to take any sort of action, or thousands of patients. And so if they don't take any action, we recommend after the initial series to further engage them with anywhere from 3 to 6 emails. We have one customer that I think we're about to implement it as far as 10 emails in the total series. So we're very excited to see how that performs. But most of our clients today will just do an additional 3 emails to try to convert them. And then from there, they finished the series and then they end up in your email file as a separate segment. So I'm going to talk about some other things related to this in just a second. But hopefully that all makes sense. And again, the reason we're excited to partner with Engaging Networks on this webinar today is really because having a platform with email, automation, surveys, donation forms, and the ability to manage engagement all in one platform allows us to do all of this. Certainly, we would still want to make sure that there's a level of integration between your database of record, whether it's Rachel's Edge or Salesforce or something else. So we'll keep going. And so in terms of like the messaging samples, I've already talked a little bit about this, but I've got some here. I won't read all of this, but again, please take a moment to maybe send a thank you or invite you to make a gift in honor of a healthcare hero. We can go to the next one. Send a note of gratitude to a Mountain Hospital caregiver. Join thousands of grateful patients and families and friends to make a gift. And And again, it's a 3 email series. And so a portion of the series is really will have messaging like this with the goal of converting them. But certainly there's you'd want to provide some other value added content in the email, such as the impact you're providing, other clickable content as well. And I wanted to share an example of a survey. So essentially, as part of this, we'll be sending out those 3 emails. We want to drive them somewhere. So this is an example for a client where this is essentially a survey that allows people to send a card or to send a note of gratitude to a healthcare provider. So they'll click on the link, they'll come to this landing page, fill in their information. Hopefully your hospital has the capacity from a fulfillment standpoint to be able to get those messages and cards or whatever you decide to come up with to the doctors or people that are being honored. So certainly the back end fulfillment is an important part of this as well. I will say, and maybe just on this slide as well, just from a branding standpoint, if your hospital already has a formal program in place, a lot of clients have a pin program. So the doctors get a pin on their lapel. So this would be, again, an excellent opportunity to drive them to a page that features the pin. If you don't have a brand for your program today, hopefully no reason why you can't really come up with a brand as part of this and brand it throughout all of the emails and on this landing page as well. And then I want to talk about, and again, the clickable content. And so I guess I kind of already alluded to this, but throughout the 3 emails, and then for those people that don't convert and they get those subsequent 3 emails, then really thinking through what type of content can you provide that gets people to engage with your content. And so again, looking historically at blog posts, you could consider quizzes. You could consider downloads. Maybe there's maybe your hospital, if you're a small community hospital, you could provide you could partner with a restaurant in the community or something to provide some healthy recipes, health calculators. So really, it's just as important as getting that gift or getting that survey response, just providing clickable content to all of these patients and making sure people are engaging with the content is just as important. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in just a moment. I think kick it over to Sarah.
Yes. So as we're building out these emails that get sent to your patients, we want to make sure that we're testing different strategies because different strategies work better for different audiences, and you want to make sure you are seeing what's working for your audience and what's not. So there's a few things that we like to test. So you can testing things like signers. So who's signing off on the email? You can test executive level, mid-level, low level. We've tried all the above. And depending on the client and the customer or the hospital, different levels work. But we've actually seen a lot of engagement with a mid-level signer. So not like the CEO, but maybe someone who's still well-known. That's been proving pretty engaging. You might want to test different calls to action. So as Paul has been alluded to, your different emails should have different calls to action. So it's not necessarily always make a gift, but sending a note of gratitude or engaging with some of the other content that you have to just make sure that we're keeping the content engaging and not just constantly asking for gifts. Other things to test is the placement of engaging content within the email. So is the header clickable? Is the text in the content clickable? Is there a big call to action in the footer that's clickable? All that stuff should be tested. And on different emails, you can kind of put things in different places and see if the different placement of things is more engaging in some emails than others, and seeing how all that is going. You could also test the email structure. So, sometimes you'll receive these super designed emails that look really nice. How does that test versus just a plain text email that looks like it's actually been sent from someone? that is just fits in with all the other emails. So testing both of those. It's also nice to test some copy variations. So we've seen clients, especially that range from a broad spectrum of who they service. So maybe you have a metro community and a rural community that come to use your hospital. You might want to have different copy variation for those different audiences, as they might be interested in different things within the content that they're reading. And then similar to that variation, you might also want to consider when people get to your donation forms to display different gift arrays for different audiences. So maybe your metro community, city center community might want a higher gift array. Your rural community might want to display a lower gift array, or whatever you think works best for your community, and then testing that out. I know Paul talked a lot about testing and talking to different service lines. Definitely testing your messaging with focusing on different service lines can help see what's working. So Intermountain, one of our clients, did this test where they tested just general hospital content versus children's hospital content. And really their children's hospital content was being engaged with a lot more. So now they make sure to focus a lot more on that children's content to keep their content super engaging. And then of course, tone of voice. So does a more professional tone of voice resonate, or does a more casual tone of voice resonate? Testing all that out as you go. So I talked a lot about testing, and you know, as you're testing all this out, the only way to actually know how things are doing is by tracking it. So you do want to make sure you're setting up tracking in all of your emails. So with any email that you send, you definitely want to make sure you're learning something. So are you looking at what was clicked on in the header this time versus last time? Are you looking at the copy and what was written in that copy and how that's tracking? You want to make sure you're focusing on different things in each email. So we're learning and we're improving for our next email send. Engaging Networks does a really great job of tracking each email. So you can very easily add tracking parameters to your emails and seeing how that specific email is performing. We like to take things a level further and then add tracking parameters on every single interactive element inside that email. So we'll add tracking parameters to the header, to the call to action in the middle of the email. Any clickable item in that email, we'll add a way to track how that's been engaged with, so that we can then see, okay, what is it that people are clicking on? What is it that people like? And then that will help inform our next send. So that's helping us test as well. Okay, kicking it back to you, Paul.
Great. Thank you, Sarah. So we've talked about, again, that whole process of patients go from the hospital, they're getting into Engaging Networks. It's kicking off this automated series, hopefully getting some donations, hopefully getting some survey responses. After they go through an initial 3 emails, there might be an additional 3 to 6 emails that happen after that. But once the patient finishes that initial automation, we want to talk about what happens next. And so we'll just go to the next slide. We'll go one more after this, actually. So again, so let's forget about all those wonderful donors that we hopefully got. They're now in our Razor's Edge or Salesforce. They're flagged as current donors. We can forget about them for a moment. But a large percent, we're going to have 2 other segments that we want to focus on after people go through that series. We're going to have an engaged list of patient prospects, and we're going to have an unengaged list of patient prospects or patient non-donors like we have on the slide here. So what's important for this program to work is because we're sending such a large volume of emails to patients that have never probably received information from the foundation before, we want to make sure we're measuring the engagement through something, through engagement scoring, which is a feature within Engaging Networks. So we can score people based on are they clicking, are they opening, etc. For most clients, engagement is really just as long as they're opening or clicking, that is what we consider engaged. I know with Apple, iOS, and everything, it's really a gray area as to what shouldn't open be considered engagement, since Apple does tend to open everything. But regardless, after people come through this series, you'll have this engaged group. So for example, and going back to the Intermountain example that Sarah talked about before in Utah, they were extremely excited because after the first 3 or 4 months of running this program, we had an engaged group of over 6,000 prospective patients. And so this is a group that you can start to then consider as a separate segment for your communication going forward. So certainly this group, you'd want to include them in all of your ongoing campaigns. You probably want to talk to them a little bit differently because they're patients, they haven't donated yet. You could also consider different ways to engage them. Maybe you want to send them a quiz or ask them to give you some information, like the Jocelyn example we have in the top right, asking people to share their diaversary. So, but again, it's funny because when we got into this, we started building these Grateful Patient programs 3 or 4 years ago. I assumed that the goal was always going to be revenue for every client. And yes, ultimately revenue is probably what we're all measured upon. But building this engaged group has proven to be just as important of a goal for most of our clients. Because with that group, you can also maybe run that group through wealth scoring. You could consider sending and marketing that group through different channels like direct mail. So for some of our clients, we often partner with a direct mail firm like StoryCause or CI Partners, where we'll work with them to sort of give them this list and they can include that in all of their analytics when they're figuring out what the acquisition send is going to be. So that's one segment. The other segment, the not so exciting segment, is the unengaged segment. So of course, there's going to be a large number of people that go through all of this communication and they're not taking any action at all. They're not clicking, they're not opening, they're not donating. Nothing's really happening here. Are these people real? To be determined. So with this group, it's really important to first set some sort of business rule. So for all of our clients, we recommend after 6 months or 12 months, removing patients that are not engaging with any of your content from your file, from your email marketing. And the reason is we don't want your sender score or your rating with all of the big email providers like Gmail or Yahoo to flag you for spam or anything like that. So monitoring engagement and removing them. I think that most clients go 6 months. I don't think we've had anyone go 3 months. If you are an organization where you've had issues with like deliverability and your sender rating, then of course you could go even shorter. Maybe it's after 3 months they stop receiving any sort of communication. Before you completely remove those people from your email marketing list, you may want to consider, you could send them one last sort of re-engagement campaign. And then also, we do recommend, because you have this list of unengaged prospects, I wouldn't send them every single campaign your organization is running. Maybe you just send them the most important ones, where you're having the most success, like your end of year campaign or your Giving Tuesday campaign. I feel like I had one more point, but that's probably it. So no, I'm good. So hopefully that makes sense. I'll kick it back to you, Sarah.
Great. So we talked a lot about what is a Grateful Patient program. How do you think about it? what would you kind of do to set it up? Now we're going to talk about kind of what in engaging networks we use to actually set these up in a way that's really meaningful, and things we really like about engaging networks that work well for this type of program. So the first thing that Engaging Networks does super well to help build these digital grateful patient programs and donor journeys is really great automation. So the screenshot here that you are seeing of all these arrows pointing to different things, if and wait and send email statements, this is actually a screenshot of the back end of Engaging Networks. Where we've set up an automation that's doing a whole lot of logical things to send an email based on a whole bunch of different parameters. If you ever set something like this up in other technology, it can get pretty complicated. So having a visual builder to build something like this is honestly amazing to set something like this up. And then Engaging Networks recently came out with a new tool called Segments that helps build audiences visually, which will also be a great addition to your digital grateful patient program. I don't have a screenshot of it here, but it's really helpful and really helps segment those audiences. Another thing that we use a lot in Engaging Networks is their conditional content and segmentation. So within the email builder itself, you can actually build in conditional content. So you'll see the screenshot right here. This is in an email builder, well, where we're specifically saying, hey, this piece of content, only send that to people who are flagged in our Grateful Patient group. So maybe you're sending an email, your end of year campaign, for example, but anyone who's in your Grateful Patient group in that campaign gets additional content related to maybe their patient journey or something like that. So you can really get granular in the messaging that you send out to your audience, all within one email and built out really nice and visually. They also provide the ability to test a lot of segments, test your conditional content, give you data on that content, as well as, of course, easy tracking and things like that to make a really good donor-centric experience. And I've already been talking about the visual builder, but I am obsessed with the visual builder in Engaging Networks. It's just so good. Up until their Engaging Networks' tool, this was marketing tools, which came out somewhat recently. It was just like a pure HTML that you were building your emails in. So it's really nice to have this like drag and drop builder where you can kind of drag in images, drag in, write in the text itself in a visual way, add in links, things like that, that make you building an email really easy. And you don't need to know how to code, and you don't need someone on your team to know how to code in order to build really nice emails. So that's a really great feature as well. The donation forms are super customizable. So something we like to do a lot is auto-populate donation forms from emails. So if someone is logged in, they click donate, and then all of the data that we already have about that user is auto-populated into that donation form, so they don't have to refill in the form. They integrate with things like DAFPay, which is donor advised funds integration, and it's a really easy integration to set up. And testing on your donation forms is also really easy. So I know we've been talking a lot about testing in your emails, but you can definitely set up split testing in your donation forms, test content there as well to see what's performing well on different forms. And then finally, this isn't necessarily related to your Grateful Patient program, but I know Paul alluded to just building out engaging content in general. And there is a ton of ways you can build out engaging content with build up your list with sign up forms, e-cards, surveys, different types of forms. So as an example here, last fall, we built this really nice bingo card for the food bank, where people can see how they're falling on this bingo card in terms of like fall activities that they've done. So that was a downloadable from an email that we sent out just to keep things exciting and interesting in their emails. We're not just constantly asking for the same make a gift, make a gift, make a gift, to add a little bit of variation into those emails to keep people engaged. Okay, and
Nice.
sorry, go ahead, Paul.
Oh no, I was just saying great. That's good work. It looks yeah, no, thank you everyone. I think that's it. If there's any questions, we can stick around for a few more minutes to answer any. Also, my email and Sarah's email is paul at or Sarah at doinggoodagency.com. Feel free to reach out to us if you've got any specific questions, if you don't want to throw it in the chat or ask today.
Yeah, we've got one that came in here, as well as one on the Slido that we had set up before. So thank you. First of all, thank you both. That was so informative and so many good takeaways there just in what you shared. But we have one from Leslie here that says, how many emails can be sent to an email address and not clicked on or responded to before that email address should be removed to not be detrimental to the sender address?
Yeah, we typically do it based on time. So we typically do it on 6 months. And I feel within 6 months, you're probably not going to send more than like 8 to 10 or so. So I don't know if you had a better answer than that.
I would say that's correct. Yeah. And I'd say you also just want to keep up on that engagement factor. So it's not just time, it should also be engagement. So if people are kind of really not engaging, you don't want to be constantly sending them emails.
And yeah, one of the point too is like, I think an important part is looking at your deliverability also. So with all of these sends, you want to make sure your deliverability, so the actual emails that are reaching the inbox it's over 97 or over 98%. If you're below that mark with these emails, then I would definitely want to take a pause, work with your IT department or whoever to make sure you're getting actually quality data from the hospital. So yeah, that would be it. And then also the unsubscribe rate too. The unsubscribe rate is typically higher with these campaigns. So it's typically like, I think 1.5 times what it would be for a typical campaign. But if you're starting to see like massive unsubscribe, would be another reason to take a pause. Some clients, what they'll do is they'll like tiptoe their way into this. So like we've got, a couple of big ones that, they got a lot of patience. So, but we are not sending to, a few 100,000 right out of the gate. We're starting with one client, actually, we started with 10,000 the first month. Then it was 20,000 the next month. Then it was 40,000 the next month. Then it was 80,000 the next month. So we kind of just kept growing it from there. The whole time while watching email deliverability and watching, I don't know if Engage Networks has like a sender score. Some platforms you can check how your email rating is doing. But yeah, just want to be mindful of all the things to making sure that you're not jeopardizing the health of your email file.
That's great. Yeah, I was going to say, I know we have a lot of custom support we can provide on questions like that, sender scores, things like that. I don't want to promise anything because it's not my wheelhouse at all, but there's definitely, I know quite a few folks on our team that can assist with getting that kind of information and pointing in the right direction at least. So that's good to know.
Yeah, but that's great, Austin. I would say, I would say if you're launching this program for the first time, then hopefully obviously work with us, but work with Engage Networks and your contact over there just to keep them informed, make sure they know what's going on. And then they can definitely, Engage Networks is a great support staff who can make sure they keep your email file healthy.
Perfect. And actually connected on that note, related, unrelated, a question here, recommendations on fixing email addresses with things like misspellings for provider, missing an at, missing a comma, goes on and on that list.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know any of the providers offhand, but and hi, Angela. I think that we could probably follow up with a few different providers that can do that data cleanup for you. I mean, if it's manageable, I guess do it yourself, but certainly we would recommend sending all of your emails. They should go from Epic or whatever platform you're in into into your wealth screening platform. As part of that, there should be some type of email hygiene process that's added to the list to make sure that all of the emails are clean before they come into Engage Networks.
Perfect. Thanks for that. I had one that came in on Slido. Looking ahead, what trends do you foresee in healthcare fundraising, and how can my foundation stay ahead of the curve? So, kind of a big question there, but
Ooh, yeah. I mean, I was talking to a client yesterday, and so one thing that worried me is AHP just came out with their report. Oh no, it wasn't AHP, it was M&R. M&R put out their benchmarks report. Google it, M plus R benchmarks. Great way to look at digital stats. But response rate over email it is declining. Like each year, it gets a little bit worse and worse. So I think the message to me is like, how do we prepare for the future? I think it's like not solely just sending solicitations all of the time. And M&R just looks at nonprofits. It's more than just hospitals, but I think a lot of people are guilty of really just focusing their communication calendar on asking. And so I think the more stewardship, the more impact that we can demonstrate throughout the year, I think that's really going to become as important because we really need to steward these donors digitally so they maybe donate in a different way. Maybe they don't respond to an email, but they'll pick up the phone or they'll text, they'll respond to a text or they'll make a major gift or mid-level gift. So that's one trend, definitely also worrisome, but I think we can overcome it. And then two, I think just the applying digital to mid-level and major. I think there's really an opportunity, specifically with mid-level. I think those teams and stewardship teams also. I think those teams are really starting to realize that digital can help with their some of their work. So I think thinking of an automation like this for your mid-level team or your mid-level prospects, as an example, could be something.
it's great. And we just put a link to the M&R report in there, or at least a way to get it, if anybody wants to look at the hard numbers that you were just referencing there. But that's great. One thing you mentioned was SMS, as far as making that a part of things. One of the questions we kind of had was, do you have any hospitals, any healthcare organizations that use SMS in their in these programs that you've been referencing today and are doing it well? Any takeaways, examples that you have of that? It doesn't have to be specific, I guess, but yeah, anything you can add there.
Yeah, I've with our clients, we've only seen, not related to this program, haven't seen SMS as part of a digital grateful patient acquisition program. It's a mouthful. Only seen SMS for events. And one client's piloting it for end of year and Giving Tuesday. I think it's definitely growing. I would say for SMS, the strategy for campaigns is typically sending that text message towards the end of the campaign. So maybe sending it on December 31st or, on Giving Tuesday. And I will say, if you're thinking about SMS, I would, because it is a growing channel, the response rates on that are doing really well. I would say start if you're doing surveys, start collecting phone numbers. So maybe not on your donation form, you don't want one extra step for people to make a donation, but wherever you can, whether it's on your foundation website footer or like your newsletters, remind people to give it to you, like start building that list. So when you're ready to start SMS campaigns, you've got a list to go after.
It's a good way to prepare. That makes sense. Okay. I have one last question here that I think then we can probably try to wrap things up. But from Neely, it says, do you add patients back into an engagement series if they have a more recent date of service, even if they haven't responded to previous outreach?
Oh, thank you. I totally forgot to bring that up. So yes, thank you for the question. So typically, um, we want to ensure that the patients only go through that automation once every 12 months. So patient goes through the automation. Um, they even if they visit the hospital 4 or 5 times in a 12-month period, we recommend typically they just go through that series once. We have one client that's doing it every 6 months. But the caveat is for whatever time frame you decide on, it would be good to update the content just slightly. So it's not the exact same content 12 months later when that patient visits the hospital again. So again, this is part of working with your data team. We will need, and Omatic has some solutions for this as well. We will need a place we could technically do it in Engage Networks. We will need a place to track if a patient or when a patient goes through this series. So we don't send them that email again within 12 months if they have multiple visits. So yeah, thanks for bringing that up. I meant to say that earlier.
No, that was a good question, and thank you for your answer there. I know there's probably going to be more questions. If anyone's like me, I think of all the questions I have after it's over, and that's just what happens, and I'm frustrated by that. So if that happens, though, you got the emails over there for both Paul and Sarah, and Engaging Networks as well. I'll throw my email on there just so if I won't be able to be much help on the
Join the
specifics of
party.
things,
Yeah.
but I can get you in the right place. If you have anything that's Engaging Network specific, I can make sure at least the right person sees that. So feel free to reach out to me if that's the case. But thank you both so much for being here today. This is like so much great information. And as a reminder to everyone,
Thank
this
you.
recording will be on our Client Academy if you need to go back over it too, because there was a lot there. But yeah, this was great. Thank you both so much.
Great. Yeah. Thank you for having us. Really excited. Yeah. And have a great rest of your week, everyone.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.